right. Welcome back to the Prospect Podcast. Beautiful Thursday before July 4th. Happy birthday, America. This will be what? This is it next year that is the 250th? It will be, yeah, I think it is. Pretty incredible. Excited to talk to our great guest today. We're really excited to talk to Brendan Thompson, doctor of physical therapy. Has a bunch of great stuff on movement, how to improve your athleticism, speed, doing it safely, and doing it to optimize your success. And we're really excited to talk to him. This is one of the kind of recurring themes on our podcast. We talked to a lot of coaches, and we talked, football, leadership, motivation. And then this is the other thing that we talk a ton about, which is really development of the athlete. I think I've gotten Derek into liking talking about speed. I don't know if that was he enjoyed talking about it before we started doing all this stuff, but now we got him a little bit roped in to the speed part of the world there. So without further ado, Brendan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you on. If you could talk about your background, how you got into all this stuff, and the evolution, right, of what you're doing. So physical therapy is one thing, but what you're doing now in movement and development of athletes is another thing. So really talk about all of that.
My background, I mean, it's got to start back in high school. So I was always a really fast athlete in middle school. And then I get to high school. I run like 11.1 in the 100, like 22 something in the 200, whatever. And over the course of the next 4 years, with some different injuries and different things that kind of come up, I go from being in football, basketball, baseball, track to basically giving up everything for track and field. ACL did me in, and my experience with that ACL is kind of what drove me to PT because the doctor told me, hey, you're not going to be fast after this, just telling you now. But it's just a statistic, so prove me wrong. After a pretty tough rehab process, came back out, ended up running a PR my senior year and got the chance to try out at the University of Iowa. But what kind of drove me this athletic development direction was, once I did get to Iowa and I developed under them and eventually became an All-American in the 4x1, I was the common athlete who lived in the weight room. My maxes from freshman year to senior year went through the roof in high school, but my 100-meter time went from 11.12 as a freshman to 10.98 as a senior. And if you're like a lot of these athletes, like I was hungry, I was chasing numbers, but the only number that didn't improve was the number that I really, really needed and the one that mattered. So when I got to Iowa and they taught me how to blend, the skill of the sport, the strength and conditioning, the rehab and wellness pieces, the recovery, the mobility, diet, nutrition, lifestyle, all of these different things that actually make a difference in the full equation. Now my 100 PR goes from 10.98 to 10.57, and I go from splitting 10 flat on the 4x1 to 9.4. Everything from the 200, my 200 was 22.4 by the end of high school. By the end of college, I was running like 20.8 in time trials, and I ran an official 21.1. But again, high school, I maybe dropped a half second in my 200 over the whole career. I get to college, and we put the whole equation together, helping me stay healthy, helping me learn movement efficiency, the tactical aspect of racing different races. And that's where I started to see my biggest successes. So when I graduated, people were reaching out to me for help. I'd never really coached before other than helping at some different clinics and whatnot. And it was kind of a new realm for me. I always enjoyed teaching people, the ins and outs of track, the ins and outs of sprinting, because I felt like having to go through that evolution as a tryout athlete and kind of grinding your way to the top of, the Big Ten and one of the best in the whole nation, that I learned a lot about that process and how to kind of send that to the next person. So if I was 23 and still getting better, if I knew at 23, if at 18 or 17 I knew what I knew at 23, then maybe I could have got a scholarship somewhere, or my development could have been even better. So I try to share those experiences with kids so that, maybe they're not realizing their potential when it's too late, but they're realizing it when it actually can make a difference for them and maybe get their college education paid for, maybe get them a professional opportunity. And once they're a professional, can they make, that first big contract or the next big contract, stay healthy, stay performing, and ultimately make a lot of money. So it's kind of what I do.
Okay, it's fantastic background. It's good to hear where someone came from and to what the development is. And track and field athletes, I think, especially when they've gone to the next level, and really had a chance to like dive into their own success from that standpoint. There's a unique level of training that's required that's probably different than what you see in most other sports. No matter what the sport is, as far as the focus on, and me and Derek have talked about this, like the the uh, the peak level that you want to get them to, right, and the refinement is at such a high level. Whereas in other sports, it's kind of a little more. I don't want to say general. It should be certain levels of specific, but general in the sense that you might be coaching lots of kids at a time. Track and field allows you to hone in on a couple of guys, and I think it does teach you things that of how to develop athletes in a certain way. Um, what what were some of the kind of lessons from that aspect? Because going through like your Twitter, it's like a litany of great stuff. By the way, I mean really, really, really good stuff. Like you have a lot of and I want to dive into it. But what is it that some of those kind of lessons as far as like development that you take with to your athletes that go beyond track, right? So I think the track athletes eventually, if they get to a high enough level, will start to learn and get that part of it. But the athletes in other sports that you talked about that you played probably don't always get that opportunity. Talk about that part of it.
So the majority of the athletes I work with are actually non-track. I've got football, baseball, basketball, field hockey, lacrosse, hockey. I've had gymnastics, ultimate frisbee, and we've even got cricket coming in. And the biggest things that I notice are that athletes are kind of arbitrarily being run into the ground in pursuit of whatever their big goal is. So whenever they're like, let's just take football for example, because it's a pretty prominent example. You show up to practice and you can basically bank on at some point in the practice you're going to get run hard over and over and over and over and over with no rest between. And then a lot of these kids leave that practice and they have a college appetite. They want to go and compete at the collegiate level. They want to get that scholarship. So then after they just got destroyed at practice, they're going to go and lift on their own a second time that day. They're going to go set up some cones in a field or go seek out private training with, somebody else. And so now they've stacked up like 6 hours of training in a day, maybe, and they'll do that. They'd do it 8 days a week if there was an extra day.
Yeah.
And what they don't understand is that you can grind as hard as you want every single day. You can go all out, whatever. But if you're not balancing that work with recovery opportunities and adaptation opportunities and fueling your body right and sleeping right and managing your stress and your workloads, you're basically digging a hole really, really fast and you're not putting the dirt back into it to bounce out. So eventually you're just sitting at the bottom of a hole like, man, how do I get out of this? Well, you've been grinding at it a day at a time, 4 to 6 hours a day, over and over and over and over and over. You shouldn't be surprised that, your knees hurt, your low back's bothering you.
Yeah.
Suddenly your 40 times suck. Your broad jumps suck. You're getting beat off the line, 80% of the time, but you're one of the best athletes on the team. So how did you get here? Well, a lot of it's self-inflicted, but also a lot of it is you don't know what you don't know. And until someone has kind of painted that picture for you and demonstrated
Oh.
that these little things really do add up and help you realize a lot of those gains that you get from that hard work, you're just going to grind yourself down and you're never going to get that opportunity you want so bad.
That's a great point. And part of it starts from a very, very young age. So, the first thing a lot of coaches do in football at the youth level, or in baseball or in basketball, is like, go take a lap. That's my favorite. That's what everyone does. Go take a lap. And so now,
especially in your world, Dave, especially in your
yeah.
youth world, the go run a lap, right? Like that's how you started practice.
All the time.
That was like, hey, go down there and do this. It's that like monotonous type of go. Like, why? What are we doing this for? Like, we're taking away from what we should be focusing on.
Right. So we now just exhausted them.
Correct.
Before we ever even got a chance to, and then we're mad that they can't tackle in the drills properly or whatever it is. Or all of a sudden they go in the batting cage after they just ran this lap, and now they're in the cage and they're huffing and puffing, and you're like, you're not hitting properly. Meanwhile, the kids just thinking, I'm trying to recover for a couple seconds here. And the thing was, I think one of the things you put in there too, you talk about a base too, developing a base of training and developing, half these kids don't even have a base, right? So when you do this, and now they don't even have a base, and you'll know the kids have the base because when they they go run the lap, they're the first kids that come through, and they're not even breathing, right? So those aren't the kids that have the issue. You know what I mean? It's the kids that's dragging ass in the back that hasn't even gotten the base, and now he's thinking when practice going to end. It just started, so there has to be that. But I think a lot of it starts when they're young, and in high school there are coaches that do a great job of it. I think high school coaches are rapidly learning things to improve themselves. That's, I would say, one of the beauties of social media and the internet has helped high school coaches a lot with some of those things. If they're hungry for information, you can really get it if you want it, right? You just have to know how to filter through things. And you talk a lot about this stuff on Twitter. What do you think is important for those sports that you talk about, obviously the non-track athletes? What is important for them to learn how to do to get themselves to a certain level, and then to understand how rest and recovery play a role in those kind of things? Where do they got to start out before they build? Like, I feel like they as Derek a lot of times says, like, they're putting like the doors on the house before they built the base. You know what I mean? So talk about the things that you think they need to start out with.
I think that if you have an end goal in mind of what you're trying to pursue, you can work backwards from there and get a pretty good idea of what's needed to support those things. So if you want to be fast at, let's just say you're building someone for like a 40-yard dash, or you're building someone for something like that. Okay, well, I know my end goal is to have a really good 40. On day one, should I be just ripping 40s? Have you built a base of 10s and 20s and 30s? Have you done any plyometric work? Do you have any general conditioning to be able to do repeated sprints? If you do start these things, the issue is I feel like we start too aggressively with too much volume, like day one. Every year I've got athletes like, all right, summer camp starts today. We should be getting some introductory stuff, right? I'm like, if you're lucky, you'll get some intro stuff, but they're probably going to train you today like you've been doing this stuff for like 6 months. So they show up, and sure enough, they get run down. I had a kid the other day say they were doing all out 200s and 100s on like a minute rest. Another kid said they did like 12 all out 40s on like 25 to 30 seconds rest. And I'm just like, what is going on here? So everyone's shins are beat up, their knees are bothering them, hamstrings are kind of talking to them, and they're just already day one, they're ground down. I think that we've got to be careful, and this goes back to your question. We've got to build just a fundamental baseline of movement, and then we have to just stack work over time, build intensity over time, get more specific over time. but you don't need to be championship ready day one. Like, it's just not going to happen. No matter how much you run day one, no matter how many jumps and burpees and whatever the hell else you decide to do day one, that athlete will not be ready for a championship day one. You have to understand that if you're building 1% daily for several months, now you give yourself a really good shot at having championship level athletes at some point. But you can't win that championship or be in championship form in one day or 1 week or 1 month. This is a consistent investment over time thing, and just taking
Correct.
little bites at a time versus trying to take the whole pie in one bite day one. You're just not
Right.
setting
And
your
I
kids
think
up for success, and you're not setting your program up for success.
100%, Brendan. And it's so interesting to see, right, how, and especially football coaches that want to, hey, we got to hit the ground running, yet you're willing to install an offense over, numerous weeks, right? But when it comes to the athlete and your players, you're trying to crush everything on day one with, hey, we're doing 16 110s for time. We're doing a 300-yard shuttle. Now, there's a little bit of mental aspect that goes into that. But when we're talking about, and this is why I love Tony Holler and all his Feed the Cat stuff, right? Where all of that is based on, look, this is for the long haul and ultimately the health, right? And where do you get, especially as a football coach, summer camp and those practices in the summer are meant to build up for that first game, right? So why crush them day one when you need to now have them? Now they're worried about, I'm so sore, I'm tired, I got a little tweak here. They can't fully invest in, hey, I need to learn these plays, I need to know this stuff, where the mental part of it needs to be so plugged in that they're distracted by those little injuries or those little tweaks or that's overall soreness that you've caused. Because why? That's the way you were done. It was taught to you, or you were coached, or how that, and we talk about that a lot on here. It's, guys coach the way they were coached, and guys are fearful of doing something different based off of, because majority of the parents in the stands only know one way, and that's what it was, and that's how it is. But to kind of tweak that, why wouldn't we follow suit in terms of implementing things, like you said, that's now going to set us up for ultimate success over the long haul? Because especially sports like football, it's a long time period. Not many games, need that consistency over and over and over to kind of drill home your point and ultimately build up. You're not going to be in great shape game one and as you are game 5. Understand that, know that. Don't try and, reinvent the wheel. Let's just continue the process and work smarter, not harder.
Yep, I agree 100%. And I heard a coach recently say, if you get a B on all of your homework, there's a good chance you get an A on the test.
Yeah.
And every single practice is a piece of homework or a piece of work that you're investing for the final test. If you're pursuing A plus, if you're pursuing A plus practices every single day, whether from an intensity or duration or workload standpoint, eventually, if you have to miss a practice, that's an F. That's a no-show. And if you're missing practices because you're pursuing too many A plus, you're in the pursuit of A plus perfection practices every day, you might miss an important section of homework that is going to make you fail the test.
Yeah.
So it's better and it's safer to pursue a B day after day after day after day after day and be good enough than it is to pursue this obscene level of perfection daily. And in pursuit of that, you get hurt, you get beat up, you get sick, you get whatever, and now you have to sit out. Well, every time you sit out, how are you going to get better for that test? So it goes back to the best ability being availability. And if we're not available because we're just overshooting too much, then what good did we do? Why did we do what we did? What was the benefit? What was the payout?
I think that's a big part of it, is that understanding that it is a progression. It doesn't have to happen exactly right now, and you can build into the different pieces of it. And I think the Derek's point about like you don't expect to run a play perfect the first time you run it on day one, right? You're teaching it, you're running it. It looks okay, but it's not going to be where you want it to be. It might be 6 weeks from now. But when it comes to getting them in shape or getting them develop speed, we're like, yeah, oh, you guys haven't done anything all summer. We'll run you to death.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, let's do more, right? Like you can't make these times, so let me add more onto that because that's gonna all of a sudden flip this switch on these kids. Like, you know, if anything, it hits the other. Like, I'm not doing. Like, coach, what are we doing? Right? Like, why? Like, we have all of this time, and that's where I think coaches and guys that are in their implementation of not only the X's and O part, right? Because that's the part that gets easy when it comes to football. Like I can teach guys on the field stuff, but when I need to build you up of how to take care of yourself, right? Off the field so that you can give me the maximum now physically is where I think coaches need to tighten it up and kind of tweak and really invest your time in that. Because if your athlete's not 100%, then it is what it is. You're not going to get everything that you're looking for coming out of them.
There's no doubt about it. That's a really good point. Talk about so you have a thing in here which I think is really interesting when dealing with an injury. And I don't mean to shift a little bit, but like you have so much good stuff. I might jump around a little bit here, but when dealing with an injury, you should not stop training completely. Rice protocol 24/7. Be reckless. Fill your body with junk. Instead, you should train around the injury, move around, stick to the rehab plan, prioritize sleep and nutrition, make a decision. So talk about when something slowing them down. Let's put it like that. Maybe it's not even something that's keeping them out. Like right. So how do you working around those kind of things and still continuing to develop? That's always a tricky thing. What are you coming expanding on what you put there? What are some of the things that you really try to recommend there?
You have to think about the fact that our body is always adapting to the stresses we do or don't impose on it. It's not only do, but it's also don't. So when we get hurt, or we're banged up, tweaked, something, even if someone's still able to go, our gut reaction is often rest, just rest. Go home, do nothing, sit on the sideline for a day or two, do absolutely zero. Stay home, do whatever you're going to do, but just rest and ice it and elevate it, compress, and it's just going to magically be ready for full speed activity in 2 days. I tend to be on the side of you want to push it to adapt tastefully so that eventually it might be prepared in some way to do the things you want it to do. And let's just say it's an ankle, for example. You got a kid, they have a tweaked ankle, they can still go, they wrap it up at practice, that kind of thing. But when they finish, should they just go and just lay up and do zero? Why not go walk around as much as you can in the pain-free range? Why not, do exercises within your pain tolerance that are going to, challenge it to adapt? The ankle itself hurts in the joint, but you have a lot of muscles surrounding that joint that help give it support and protection. So building those things up, great. Now let's say that it's so bad you can't do anything. It's all beat up. That ankle's jacked. You can't move it. It's swollen up like crazy. That doesn't mean I go and sit around and do nothing. Like I can do non-weight bearing exercise. I can do range of motion, pump in circles, those kinds of things. I can work the rest of my body. I still have a lot of body that's functional. When you work the rest of your body, you still get beneficial hormone surges and endorphins and things that can help that injury heal. You're promoting blood flow through your body. You're promoting your body to adapt to something. And so it's going to do that. So that's kind of where I go along those lines is if you hurt something, If you just sit out, you're adapting to nothing. So your body is now like, all right, well, I've got no stress on me at all. So I'm going to adapt to being bedridden. Well, that means I'm going to detrain my aerobic system. I'm going to detrain all of the strength, power, explosion I've been building. I'm going to lose some of this muscle mass I've built. And then a kid's been out for a week or two and they've lost 5 to 10 pounds of muscle. Well, that's a problem. Now they've lost some cardiac output. They've lost some capacity. That's a problem because they still need to go back and play those games. They still need to go back and get through those practices. Well, now instead of just one piece of the puzzle being kind of taken out and jacked up for a while, now the whole puzzle's jacked up. They're deconditioned. They're not powerful. They're not sharp. They don't have the same build that they had before. And now they're expected to just rematriculate into practice, seamlessly. And then what we tend to see after those periods of rest is a very high re-injury rate. And it might not always be the same ankle. It might be now the knee's jacked up. It might be the hip or low back get jacked up. But a lot of it stems from, I believe, lack of stimulation of the body in a beneficial way to keep all the pieces afloat as best as you can while you kind of tend to this injury, if that makes sense.
Yep, keeping him moving, adapting. I'm curious if when an athlete, let's say, has an injury and he rehab and he comes back. Look, let's use ankle as an example. Like, okay, he had bed sprain ankle, he's rehabbing it, he's coming back, he's continuing to work. Now he's back in regular play, and one of the things I think the mistake that athletes make is, do you think? I'll ask you the question. Do you think that they should continue to rehab for a certain amount of period beyond the fact that they're already back? Because I feel like that's one of the mistakes that athletes make, and even athletic trainers, right? Okay, they're good. They have so many kids they have to worry about. That kid's back in play, good to go. That person's now not even seeing them anymore, right? Is there a time frame that you think beyond the time that they're back, quote unquote, healed, that they should continue to do PT along with their actual conditioning or practicing type of thing?
Yeah, I think the mistake, and I see it as well, is let's just say, for example, it's the ankle. A doctor says, hey, you got about 4 weeks, and they do nothing for 4 weeks. And then it's like, all right, you're cleared. And when an athlete hears cleared, they think, okay, I'm cleared. That means I'm literally who I was 4 weeks ago. I'm ready to go. And the problem is when they hear that cleared, they think that means that they don't need to give any more attention to it. There's no more reason to strengthen it, no more reason to ice it, no more reason to target it in any way. But one of the biggest causes of injury or biggest risk factors for injury is history of a previous injury. And there is a chance that when we do forget about it, you run into these little tweaks and resprains and things of that nature. And then they wonder, well, why? I was told I was cleared. I'm good, right? No, just because you're cleared, it means you can now tolerate the things that you need to tolerate to go back to normal function. But you still need to give it attention. You still need to respect the fact that it happened. And I think that when we stop respecting the fact that the injury did occur and we stop giving it the love and attention that got us back onto the field, that's when we end up back on the sidelines over and over and over again. And we have those kids that are basically riding the injury carousel for their entire career. You have to take ownership and you have to do your maintenance exercises. You need to go and take care of it as much as you can, because you should be so upset at the idea that you will never play another down, that you'll do anything to stay on the field. Well, staying on the field means trying to bulletproof your body. Maybe you should give it some more attention and focus on it so that you're doing the things that got you back from that injury on a consistent basis. Now, you don't have to have a crazy high dose of the activity or exercises that target it, but do something. Pick like 3 to 5 things that are just part of your routine every day and just do them. And that will take you so much further than just acting like, I'm cleared, the injury never happened, it's in the past, forget about it, now I can move forward. Like, just pick a few things and do them consistently for as long as you need to. Maybe it's one season, maybe it's for the rest of your athletic career, but pick a few and stick with them, and it'll work wonders.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, when I was in college, I had to sit out a season with I had herniated my disc in my back. This is back before they realized these things were healed. They originally said I couldn't come back, but I was lucky. I had a great physical therapist, and that season while they were practicing, I was down there working with her for 2 hours a day. But she gave me, when I came out, these exercises to do every single day, in morning, at night, because if you don't, once I came back, if you don't do them, you could recur in your career again. And I did them all the way through. And honestly, I still, to this day, I don't do them as much as I should, but still to this day, if I feel some sort of thing coming on, I do those exercises. Literally in a couple days, I'm pretty good. And it's really interesting because it's not, people think it's this overly complicated thing where you got to go back to physical therapy and go through that whole entire thing. But it literally could be 3 or 4 exercises for me, it used to be like less than 10 minutes a day, and it made all the difference. It got me through my career. I was able to come back and play and have very few issues. There were things I had to stay away from, but I was able to build the strength back up in there, and it's taken me all the way through. I'm 51 years old. It's helped me when I've had issues. So it's really, really interesting because the body. I wonder what your thoughts are on this. Like, how is some of these exercises that work some of these smaller parts of the smaller muscle areas, how do they have such a large impact on the overall big muscle groups? And how is some things like, and I'll use an example, like for me with the back, I think I had I would have to do, like, I would lay in my stomach, do leg lifts, 10 each side, 3 sets. Then I would have, get on fours and do, like, arm up and simple things like that. Right. Then leg back. And then I would do like that kind of dolphin stretch and then, go through my full stretch routine. And it was quick. It was amazing what it does. I mean, amazing. Like you feel like if you're hurt, you feel like you're halfway there after you do it. I'm not talking about a catastrophic where you can't move injury. Obviously, that you got to go see the doctor. But where it's something that you tweak something, right? Talk about how these kind of small little exercise, and I see you do with the speed stuff, right? With the warm up that you do, can really develop the muscles to really get stronger and be able to help you do the bigger things down the line.
So I guess that's kind of like a two-parter.
Yeah,
this
sorry.
might be this might be controversial. It might not. So with the big muscles versus the small muscles, let's say a hamstring versus a glute. A lot of the big muscles that we spend time developing, quads, hamstrings, those kinds of things, they cross 2 joints. And so their precision of motion at a single joint is going to be limited. And so they're going to be more your power output types of muscles or big forceful movement types of muscles. Whereas the muscles like a glute that cross like a single joint, an iliopsoas or something like that, something that crosses a single joint and it might be small, is going to have a greater precision of motion to keep that joint in a good place while the bigger muscle kind of dominates the output portion of that. And so, again, some of this is controversial, some of it isn't. Some people talk about like the glute firing before the hamstring. And if the glute fires before the hamstring, it's a good way to move. You're kind of solidifying the hip joint, and then you're going through your powerful movement with hamstring and glute working together. Some people think that if the hamstring fires first, the hamstring's going to dominate the motion. You're going to have less precision of motion and be more apt to some different tweaks and strains and overuse things, because now the distribution of that load isn't only on it's only on primarily the hamstring versus distributing that between the glute and the hamstring. Just as like a simple example. Same thing, like think about like a squat. Sometimes people's knees hurt in a squat. They might not be distributing their load to their hip as much as they're really going knee dominant in this thing, and it pisses the knees off over time. And if you can help them kind of distribute that load between their joints rather than really hammering and being overly dominant in one joint, same thing. Like people tend to get relieved, they tend to feel better, that kind of thing. I hope that makes sense. And then, so when you target these little muscles, it, people kind of debate whether or not PT works, and a lot of the studies show, some of the PT stuff might work in isolation, but any intervention in isolation, in my opinion, is short-sighted. You have to have kind of a holistic view of whatever it is you're treating. So if you are getting your diet and nutrition right, your sleep right, your exercises right, those kinds of things, all of that together tends to create good outcomes. And it's the same thing with training. When we have the right combination of stimulus and adaptation and recovery potential, those kinds of things tend to go well. So with a warm up, for example, like as you're mentioning, as we're getting ready to sprint, I start very, very general, very low intensity. And as the warm up continues to progress and progress and progress, it goes from general low intensity to a more specific higher intensity until we eventually get to the end task, which is sprinting, speed, power stuff. And that's just kind of the way I do that. And I feel like it primes a lot of those different muscles to not only does it get them firing the right ways at the right times with the right intensities and coordination, those kinds of things, but it also is just sort of like you're starting the car, you take it around the block, you kind of get your wheels moving a little bit to get some traction before you go and drag race. Same kind of deal. I mean, that's just the way that I view it at times, or I explain it to my athletes when they're like, man, this warm up, I really feel this, this, and this. Like, how does it work like this? Or why are we doing these drills? We're going from general to specific. We're going low intensity to high intensity. And in theory, your body should be ready to sprint by the end of the warm up.
That's a great point. It's it leads into my next question, which is like, is there a part of the development where they're building up before they should even be sprinting? Meaning, like, are there, is there a stage development before they actually get into a level sprint? I mean, I guess 10-yard sprints they could start with, those kind of things, but is there a staged part to even that before they even get to sprinting?
The way I look at sprinting, I think sprinting is a little different than, say, a sport specific task.
Okay.
Kids are running, they're playing tag from a very young age. They're running around, sprinting around, doing all kinds of different things. I think that you can incorporate sprints day one. It's something that's not so unique or foreign to them that it's like, okay, let's walk before we can crawl, or crawl before we can walk before we jog before we sprint. Well, they've literally done that over the span of their life. They started crawling, they went walking, they jogged, now they can sprint. So they've already checked that box through normal childhood development. Now it's just introducing them to different things to make them actually think about what it is that sprinting is. And a lot of these kids come in, they're early teenagers, shoot, some of them even like 16, 17 years old, and they still heel strike when they sprint. And that's just something that when they were developing, nobody gave them the attention, or they never really had to think about, or maybe their sport promotes a heel strike because they have to change direction so much, or they start and stop so much, that now they just run naturally with the heel strike. Well, when you cast your leg way out in front of you and you dig in with your heel, it slows you down. So why would you want to be on the brake the same time you're trying to be on the gas? It kind of cancels each other out. So if I can help a kid realize something that simple and correct it with some different drills, showing them like why the heel is not an adaptive way to sprint, and then they're able to incorporate that, and we can iron out that heel strike in a couple sessions. Like, that's a huge difference for a kid. Now suddenly those shin splints aren't as bad. Those ankles don't feel as nasty afterwards. Their knees can maybe have a little bit of a break because they're not just always slamming on the brakes. while they're trying to be on the gas.
Do you have to teach them how to be bouncy? Like, really, is that part of the aspect to it? Because kids who like strike with their heel, it's obviously you notice it right away. Or if anyone's paying attention, you notice it right away. There's zero elasticity, zero bounciness to them, right? Is teaching them to become bouncy. Like I see with high school kids all the time. You're right. And I think a lot of times with high school kids, the issue is if they play football or baseball or soccer or the cleats that they're running in, most of the time, they got obviously cleats in the back, cleats in the front, and it makes it even because of the change of direction aspect of it, right? Those parts actually dig in, and I think you're right. They run a lot flatter a lot of times,
Yep.
and I think that becomes an issue. And I notice it even with my own son because he plays so many of those kind of things. But in high school, that's crazy how many high school kids that it's an issue with, because the same kind of thing as my son deals with, right? He's always playing in cleats for this and that and this. And so even if you train a little bit outside of, you're doing training outside of it to try to get them to be bouncy, as soon as they put those cleats back on, they kind of revert, right? It's kind of hard to get them out of that. What are, like, how do you teach them to be bouncy all the time? Like, what are things you could do there? Because I think at the high school level, it's really hard. I've seen so many really good athletes that just are not as bouncy as they should be and don't move as fast as they should be. But if, you give them the ball in a game and they can change direction and they can explode, but they're just, they're not quite as good as they could be because of that.
What I see a lot are athletes that live in this sort of traffic mode. And I always say the best athletes can distinguish between when they need to run like they're in traffic and run like they've got an opening. So let's just say it's a running back. Running back gets the ball and they're in traffic mode. They're trying to navigate all these different moving pieces. There's linemen moving this way. There's blitzers coming this way. There's blockers going that way. There's different things happening all over the field. When you're in traffic mode, you've got to be, on your heels is fine. Getting wide outside your base is fine because you might have to go side to side any given second to dodge somebody, whatever. But when that big, beautiful opening happens and you see daylight, you have to be able to flip that switch and get out of this sort of choppy traffic mode off your heels and flip that switch to go top speed. Now, let's say a safety is coming and they have a good pursuit angle on you. As they get into kind of your space, you have to flip that switch again. All right, this is traffic. Lose the safety, flip it back, full speed, go score. So I try to make sure that they understand that there's different contextual things that happen on a field that would make top speed detrimental. Like you don't want to take top speed mechanics straight into the line and have no ability to change direction, lose anybody, make a move, make someone miss, whatever. Like if you're that was me. I had none of this because all I knew was fast.
Right.
So you got me on the outside, you give me the ball, there's a safety coming at me. I didn't know that I needed to throttle down a little bit to shake the safety to then go and score. I just thought, outrun him. You're the fastest.
I'm going to run right by him. Yep.
Well, if you don't know how to use your brakes and how to use your steering wheel, you're like a Lamborghini that's missing both of those. And a lot of times, like it works, and maybe more often it doesn't work. And so you end up falling short. So a lot of these athletes are really good that are super speedy, but then also there's a lot of these athletes that they can accelerate for 10 yards maybe, and then they can't get off their dang heels to hit that next 2 or 3 gears to then pull away at the second level.
It's a great point. Is there a feeling that they should feel that would indicate that they are moving to top speed? And Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're coaching high school kids now. Like, I think there are kids that probably don't know what that feels like to go from traffic mode, as you say, to acceleration, where you're going from being probably a little more bent to upright, right? Like it's a rise almost as you're rising towards the balls of your feet, the sprint, right? It's a rise of the body. Is there a feeling they should feel like so if Derek's coaching his high school kids, right, and his running back is running in traffic or his receiver catches the ball and he's running in traffic and now he has to accelerate, is there something that he should be able to see or the athlete should be able to feel to know that they're getting to that point? Because that's something I think that if we could understand it, probably can coach it a little bit too.
Well, I think, Dave, if you also kind of compare it to like running a 40, where your first 10 you should be low and you're kind of progressing into that, like, now I'm full blown sprint mode, right? But I do think that the making the athlete aware of like what you're saying, like what they should be looking for or feeling when they're attempting to do that, whether it's navigate in traffic or blow the top off of it, right? If we can make them more aware of that, I think they would pay more attention to it. And now, oh, okay. Like I'm sure they've all at some point experienced it, but they just don't know that that's like what it is, or that's what we're trying to get across to them. Does that kind of make sense, Brendan? Like kind of where we're going with it, or where, is there something that we can give them like, hey, this is what it should be, or this is how it should be, that now for me as the coach can say to you, hey, when you get to this point, this is what it should be.
What I think is kind of the key to this is if they don't have that tool in their tool belt, it's hard to just give it to them. They need reps and reps and reps and reps and reps of sprints that are well executed, that are on the ball of the foot, that are, they've progressively risen up to top speed and started to pull away at some point. But they also need reps and reps and reps and reps of speed, agility in confined spaces. And if you can combine those things where we navigate some piece of traffic and then we've got to go somewhere, whether you want to gamify it and time it or whatever that might be, a lot of athletes will eventually start to be able to just shut their brain off and just go exist in the sport versus having to think about like, okay, I'm in traffic. That means I'm not on my toes. Or that means I'm going to be more on my heels and side to side. Okay, I'm out of traffic. What does that mean? Oh, wait. Oh, I forgot. Oh, shoot. All right, I got tackled. Dang it. Because you don't want them to do calculus in a game.
Right. Absolutely
for things like that. For things like that, like they've got enough to worry about.
Correct. Right.
Think about
almost like you want to take some things off their plate in order to ultimately. It's the same thing with like, hey, I want you to know the play so that you're not thinking about as you're trying to avoid the defender in front of you, right? Like, and I always say this, like with coaching, if I'm still teaching your stance, your start, right, or like if I was teaching those things on Friday night in the middle of a game, right, like your alignment, all those, like you should have all of that. We should have repped that so much during the week that you're already going to do that automatically, and now we just worry about, hey, this team this, so we have to tweak we have to go here, right? Like there are some automatics, like almost that, what I was always told was like a muscle memory aspect of it, that, hey, I know that when I line up, this is my stance and I start and I'm coming out and I'm doing this every single time because I've repped it so much. It's just natural, right? Like those are the things I think we're talking about.
Yeah. And you probably should feel like when you go from traffic mode to full speed mode, you should feel almost like a floating effect when you accelerate. Like it's almost like you're going from like moving, trudging kind of a feel to a boom acceleration, and you're floating, like your body's starting to float forward. And like I remember when I was running back, when I break into the open, like and I'd see it and I would go. And I would always be surprised where no one was near me, because I was like, oh, I must have really accelerated because now no one was near me. And then when times that I didn't, like whatever reason, like sometimes, when you're a running back, I don't know, it's not flowing in that game. Like you're running good.
Right.
You're running
Sometimes you
good.
just don't feel it. You just don't have, like, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Like you're not seeing it quite as well, and then you hit the gap.
Same thing with like a basketball player.
Yeah,
like, you know, you're just not feeling your shot, or baseball. Like, hey, I'm not really seeing the pitches that I'm supposed to be seeing right now. Like, I just don't have that level of, I don't know if it's focus or whatever it is. You just don't have it, right? How do you get to it?
It's you would grind into the you end up grinding into the opening instead of like exploding through it, and teaching kids that and I think the biggest thing about
it's hard.
Well, the biggest thing about traffic, obviously, listen, there are certain natural element to some of these things, but that people have a feel for. But there's an element of like the feeling of when you're in traffic, you're maneuvering to getting the point where you can accelerate and to be able to like shift that body mode to be able to fly. And it literally is like when people say someone's flying, that's what it should feel like when you're moving real fast.
Hell yeah.
You go from being tense and tight when you're because when you're changing direction.
I guess I've never experienced that level of floating to full blown speed, but what I have felt is that change of direction, that short shuttle, right? That 5-10-5, that punt return, make the first guy miss, and now I got to 15, 20 yards, and now all of a sudden everybody's starting to catch up, right? Like I never felt that like 40 acceleration, like this is amazing, right? But what I did feel was that 5-10-5 short, quick burst, like didn't get out, right? That's a very big difference. And to get younger kids to understand that, yeah, that guy might do that better than you, right? Or might have that different feel. How can we like get that feel to be across the board? Is that, you know what I mean? Like is that something that's even possible? Right? Is a 100-meter guy always just going to be that outside receiver who runs by everybody and will never be able to be that dig guy coming across the middle, make a guy miss? Or can we at least bring that floor closer to the ceiling?
The way I look at it is any 100-meter guy that's a 100-meter first guy is going to struggle with change direction. And the only reason that they do is because they were never taught it. And it's similar to like a very powerful athlete in the weight room. You can't take the strength out of them to get them to do finesse things. They just want to brute force everything. And when they learn the finesse aspect, now suddenly they're a more dangerous athlete on the field. Same thing with speed. When you have someone who's naturally super speedy and they've never been taught that they can throttle down and live at, 85, 90% of their max speed and be able to maneuver better, they're just going to defer to their strength, which is their speed. Same thing. Whereas a guy that's maybe more technically equipped with different movement variety and maneuvering capabilities, agility, those kinds of things, if you can raise their speed ceiling, now they can do those things at a higher speed. But it's just like helping these people understand and develop skills that help them maximize what they have in their toolbox. If a speed guy only has speed in his toolbox and he believes that's all that's in his toolbox, that's all he's going to use. But as soon as you start building in the game speed stuff, the slow down, stop, change directions, this is why we do it, this is when we do it, this is how we do it, suddenly they're twice as deadly. Because now they can take the top off the defense, but then also they can move a lot faster when they're maneuvering. Like think about how Tyreek runs his routes and he just weaves in and out of traffic seamlessly. Well, he's a 10-1 guy now, 10-1-0. That's dangerous.
In his off season.
If he's in his off season, yeah, that's dangerous.
Right? Yeah. And he's trying to race. What's his name? Who won the 100 meters? Like he's going back and forth.
Noah Lyles,
him and Noah Lyles are going back. Like I know, at least
he raced his brother, I think. Right?
I know Tariq is very outspoken about like, hey, I've just done this, and he's actually taken I just heard him on a podcast recently. Like, hey, I've recently taken more of a focus on that track time or, whatever it is. Now, whether it's, Tyreek just being Tyreek or whether he's actually wanting to take that to the next level and talk about how can I take my track speed, my track times and implement it into what I do on a football field, which is, very, very different because for the most part, I think a lot of I think football guys think I can go run track, but I don't think a lot of track guys think I can go play football. Am I right in saying that? I don't think it goes the other way. Unless
think
they
about
were
what it takes to be a successful track athlete. A lot of 100 sprinters aren't very heavy. They're not very heavy.
Right.
You give them that ball and they get hit across the middle from a 250-pound linebacker.
Yeah, running a 4.2.
120-pound safety coming downhill. You will not want to play football very quickly. Now, there's also a lot of track guys and football guys who grew up doing the other sport. There's a lot of guys who did football and track. There's a lot of guys who did track and football.
Right.
And they gravitated to
I
one
push it
for
to
one
my high
reason
school
or
athletes.
the other.
I push it. Please do both. Please.
You know what's really interesting? And I don't mean to interrupt, Coach, because I want you to be able to go back to what you're talking about. But you know what I think is really interesting? This is to me being a little bit older guy here. In like the 80s and 70s when you had a less specialization and more like guys who did do football and track or other sport, you had a lot more. And I know people consider these guys anomalies, but there are a lot of guys like that because when I was growing up, that's who I wanted to be like because I did track and football. I played all sports when I was young, but then as high school, I did track and football. And Bo Jackson, Herschel Walker, guys like Deion Sanders, and there was a multitude of guys. I'm leaving out guys. I'm just naming the most popular. Even guys like Earl Campbell. All those guys were track guys, right? And they were huge. I mean, Herschel Walker ran 10.0 in 100 meters at 215 pounds. Bo Jackson, something similar in that range. That never happens anymore. Okay.
Yeah, even think about like a Ricky Williams.
Usain Bolt, obviously at 6'5", weighed 190 because he's 6'5". You know what I mean?
210.
Or 210, right? But because of the height, right? And that was. Right. But I would say Usain Bolt is really like what you don't see it as much in the American athletes, maybe because of specialization. But Usain Bolt is really much more like a lot of those 70s, 80s athletes, just with all the modern training. I mean, he was a huge guy, right? And a couple of the other guys for them, Asafa Powell is huge, right? A huge guy. I don't know exactly what he weighs, but you can see he's physically bigger than most of the sprinters that you have there. So I think it's really interesting, and I don't know if the specialization, because I think it triggered with me with Tariq. You're saying him running the 100 meters, and kind of he obviously looks huge next to a lot of the sprinters, even though in football he's really not like a big guy per se, So I wonder if there's the fact that they learn to change direction and sprint so much more in the older days that they learned how to handle it at bigger sizes where that's less Tony Dorsett, even though he was only, I think, $195, 200, he was a superstar track athlete. These guys were all track stars, right? And it's not as much. Now, look, they all did it really as a secondary sport because the football coach said, go run track, right? It wasn't, and they just obviously, and it kind of started to translate. But I will say this, they were much more one-cut guys than you see guys like Tariq nowadays. So Bo Jackson, as great as he was a one-cut guy. Herschel Walker definitely was a one-cut guy. Even Tony Dorsett was really, who they considered more shifty back then, was a one-cut guy. They were not like Barry Sanders was really the first, and obviously he was one of the greatest, is maybe the greatest of all time, was the first among those kind of guys that you see with that shiftiness and a shift to that kind of a guy. But if you look at Derrick Henry's more of a throwback to what there was back in the older days. And he's had an amazing career. Guys didn't think that a guy like that could be a pro anymore and be successful. So I don't know. I don't know if I have a question per se, but I'm just kind of, is there something that you like? You think there is to that at all to be able to carry weight and sprint?
In a sense, yeah. Now, there's in the track community, a lot of people talk about mass specific force,
Okay.
which is essentially you're creating as much force possible per pound body weight. And there's two pieces of that equation. You build your force ceiling really, really, really high, but then also you want to keep your body weight kind of lower and more manageable so that that extra force you build projects that mass through space versus just being as big and fast as strong as possible where BFS used to rule in my high school development days. Everybody was, the whole goal was just get really big, get really fast, get really strong. And I think now it's more, they've added this extra contextual piece, which is get big enough, get strong enough, and be fast as hell.
Yep.
And some people realize now that maybe they were carrying a little bit too much weight, and so they're intentionally keeping their weights down. Now, with some of my guys recently, I've seen, like I had a guy put on 30 pounds from 195 to 220, actually 228, and he split a sub 50 in the 4x4. He's running like 23 miles an hour at that size at
Wow.
17 years old. I've got a kid who was 171. He's about 5'9", 5'10". Now he's 192. He's faster than he's ever been. And so I think that there's a point where that extra mass, as long as it's engine mass and not just dead mass, is going to drive that athlete better. But beyond a certain point, that extra mass also slows you down.
Right.
And there's a lot of research on that too, that for every pound of mass, you slow down this much per ground contact time or whatever, or you have to have this much more force to overcome that mass to still be fast and relevant. So there's guys like, I think Ryan Bailey was like 220 something pounds as an Olympic sprinter. Fred Curley is not a small dude.
No,
That
he's
guy
huge.
is an Olympic sprinter. Dude's massive. Saquon ran track. Christian McCaffrey ran track. DK Metcalf, huge dude, ran 10.3 in the 100 recently just to show he could. So there's still big dudes that do it. I think there's just less prevalence of people actually going out and doing it to where we can see it versus just being, a football only guy. They could go and, enter a track meet for $20 and show us that they're damn fast too. Whereas in the track world, you can be damn fast on the track, but have no change of direction, no size, and you're going to get broken.
Yeah. Fred Curley's interesting because he's like 205 at 6'3", and he like looks like he's running with like such there's times when you watch him run, it's like he doesn't even look like he's working. It's amazing how much force he generates. I mean, like if he was quote unquote a football player, he'd probably be 6'3", 225 and probably would look like those guys in the old days did. You know what I mean? That type of frame. But it is amazing how at his size, because Usain Bolt was, even though he was, because he had such length, he did always look like he was working to me though. Like until because his style of running, Fred Curley doesn't even look like he's working. Like he looks like he's just kind of trucking along, and it's amazing how fast he's able, with the amount of force he's able to generate, which is it's incredible. You talk about with sprinting, doing a day of sprinting and then take a 48 to 72 hours break in between, and then coming back and sprinting again. What does that break in between look like? And, go into a little bit about that.
So essentially it follows Charlie Francis's high-low model for speed development. And the whole idea is that you make your high days really, really high. You sprint, you go high in the weight room. Anything intense that you want to do that week or in a session, you just consolidate it into that day so that your days between, whether it's during the week or during the weekend. So maybe during the week, you're taking your 48 to 72 hours off. One of those days might be completely off. If not both of them, if we're going over a weekend. Otherwise, one of those days might be like a low intensity technique day. It might be a tempo day where you're going out and getting some light conditioning in to support your active recovery efforts. You might get off your feet completely, go do cross training, get on the bike, get in the pool, do dumbbell circuit, go to the trainer, go to the PT, go to your health, whatever it is you do on that down day, with the whole goal being that it facilitates recovery so that when you get back to your next high day, because that's your big day. Your high days are your big days. No one wants to go, well, a lot of people want to, but you shouldn't. You should not be redlining during your recovery days, because if you're redlining on your days off or light, now you're basically paying for the high intensity day the day before, and now you've added another thing that you have to adapt to that's taking away from your ability to recover and be prepared for that next high quality day, maybe Wednesday or coming off the weekend and on Monday. So the less that you can kind of put in your queue of things to recover from, maybe the better off we are.
Right.
And if you can take that time and just focus on outputs one day, focus on technique another day, or something lighter that's just, again, it's stimulating you. You might sweat a little bit. You're getting lots of ground contacts, lots of exposure to training. It might be a higher volume day that day. But the whole goal is that it's supportive in nature to speed and athletic development. It is not to be deleterious to the other work you did the day before.
That makes sense. It's what does a sprint day look like? So like if you're kind of into your program, because I know you have like stage different developments from staging standpoint, but what does a sprint day look like? Is it like Tony Holler tries to keep people to, short burst and sprints? What is a guy who like plays, playing football? What should their sprint day look like?
It depends on if it's a practice day or not.
Okay.
If they're not practicing, then we can focus more on just a typical sprint day, and it might look like a feed the cats kind of day. It might just look like, I've been doing this. This is my 8th year. I'll be finishing up. Dynamic warm up, some movement prep, whether it be with some different jumping plyometrics. Maybe hit some drills if somebody has some opportunities to improve certain technical pieces, or use the drills as kind of a reference point so that the kid is like, okay, that's what I need to feel. I need to feel it. Okay, now it's time to go. Hit a couple buildups. You might sprint. Maybe it's some contrast sprints where they're doing some resisted stuff followed by unresisted stuff. Maybe it's just hammering out a few 20s and a few 30s. If it's longer, I mean, maybe we're talking about hitting a couple 40s to just make sure they're getting to max speed. I enjoy something called crescendo runs, which is where you start super easy and then you just let the athlete build up little by little by little on their own accord. And then whenever they feel like they're at top speed, they just count to 2 and then shut it down. And that way they're at least getting to a really high speed stimulus, and they don't have the stress of an intense acceleration on the front end. I really enjoy those. And then just following up with maybe some medicine balls and then a lift. That'd be
Okay.
like a speed day. And I mean, it's cut and dry. It's not reinventing the wheel. But you basically want to stimulate the athlete and give them something to adapt to. If you don't
Right.
do enough, there's not enough to stimulate or to give them a good stimulus. There's not really a big need to adapt. If you overstimulate, then we go past the, kind of the minimal effective dose area or the optimal effective dose, and now we start going downward on the other side of the curve. So stimulate just enough, pull back, call it a W, move on. Now, if they do have football practice, maybe that just looks like getting a few sprints in before the main practice starts with good rest in between, and then going through practice status quo.
What's your thoughts on running after practice? I'm curious your thoughts on that, because that seems to be something that
I saw the head shake. We already know what way he's going.
I already know where he's going to go, but football coaches cannot get that out of
Obsessed
their
with
head.
it.
They cannot get it
Obsessed
out of
with
their
the
head.
conditioning.
Let me paint.
Practice.
I will paint a picture.
Sure.
If we're going to sprint, there's the benefits of sprinting are you're getting to big, violent, powerful, explosive positions, which usually require you to be at full gas tank. You're feeling pretty good. The engine is freshly fired up. You're ready to just go hit it and nail these all-out intensities with good recovery. If we wait to do that kind of work until we fatigue the athlete for 3 hours or 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever it might be, now maybe those positions are like 10 or 20% less violent and less extreme than the positions and powers and intensities you could have hit at the beginning of practice. So you're basically selling yourself short on both ends. You're going to have slower speeds, smaller positions, longer ground contact times, and shitty movement. And when you practice shitty movement over and over and over and over and over again, like we talked about muscle memory before, your body's going to reference that shitty movement when it needs it the most. Why not practice good movement fresh and rep that out and get those good contacts in and those good repetitions in so that your reference for muscle memory is of high quality rather than over here when it's of subpar quality or really terrible quality. If you're looking to sprint, now if you're looking to run, by all means just run, but at least do something that makes sense. Don't just run for the opportunity to get tired.
Right.
Run with a sense of purpose. Have good technique. Have rest intervals that make sense. Have volumes that make sense. And again, you're trying to complement all of the work that you're doing and what you're trying to mold the athlete into. If you give them so much so quickly that the quality of the tempo run is even garbage, now you've overshot. Now they're in a super deficit, and now they might have to pay for that session for the next 3 or 4 days.
Right.
Because we were greedy and decided that, practice was supposed to be done in an hour, but we actually finished all of our practice stuff an hour early. How are we going to fill that hour? Let's just go do stuff.
Right. It's like, listen, it's the same as when, hey, as a position coach in football, dude, I can come out here and we can run 1,000 drills. Like we see so many of these, social media trainers just go out there to just do shit without any long-term or intent or purpose to why I'm doing this for this. Right. Which I think with this generation, which I call the why generation, right? Like they want to ask why. Like, coach, why are we doing this drill? Well, we're doing this because when we run this play in the next segment of practice, you need to know how to get in and out of this break or do it this way or have intent for what you're doing. Just don't go out there to do shit. Like it's the most, and parents don't see it because they don't know it. You know what I mean? But like you said, you're trying to get that kid to sign up for another 30 sessions, right? Like,
I think the bad thing about it is that some of it, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, some of it is, and it's maybe more football, but it could be any sport, to be honest. Some of it is, hey, parents, I'm working your kid really hard. I'm doing my job as the coach kind of thing. Like
I'm justifying why you're bringing this kid here at 5 a.m. every day or why you're paying $330. Like
you pay me $8 million. I'm working them to the bone, right? Even the college coaches get into this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
oh, absolutely.
I'm getting paid
you gotta live
$8 million a year. We don't know yet if we're going to win every game. So at least I'm justifying what I'm doing by working them to the bone. So when my AD or someone, or an alumni asks what's going on over there, they can visually see guys dying and you know what I mean. Like if they came off and guys were hop skipping and jumping out of practice, happy as a clam.
Be like, oh, you didn't work hard enough.
Mentality that has to. It's a mentality shift that has to change purely on the word called.
Yep. It's why Tony takes so much shit, right? It's why Tony Holler and those guys take so much shit when they come, like, you know what I mean? Because their kids don't leave practice dragging, right? Like exhausted. I'm tired. I'm this. I heard
you wouldn't have a singer, right? Someone who's a singer who has to perform on stage, let's say on Saturday. You wouldn't have them belting it out on Thursday to their nth degree. Yeah. Because on Saturday, when they actually have to perform, they won't have anything left. But when we do it physical, that's a version, and singing is a version of physical performance, right? So, but we'll do it with other muscles like our legs and our bodies and torture them, and then all of a sudden and get upset when all of a sudden the cornerback gets run by another person who is well rested and is just as fast as them. So that it's really the key word is how are you getting the peak performance when you need it? Not we don't need peak performance on Tuesday. That's such a hard thing for and you know Derek. One of Derek's all the podcasts we've been on. One of his biggest thing is like so many coaches are coaching how they were coached. But it's like, yeah, you know what? My safeties coach in high school, because I went to high school and I graduated in 1992. My safeties coach used to come over to me and he'd be smoking a cigarette and talking to me. I mean, that also changed, right? You can't do that anymore, right? And he would take a long pole and then explain to me how to fill the alley, you know? So, I mean, that part has changed too. And I think coaches have to start to adapt to it. But I think parents and expectations, you know, when you go to the lower levels, high school or maybe higher level youth, parents don't know what they're seeing. So if they see someone working their kid, they feel like whatever they're doing is some level of justification. And I think coaches have to get that out of their head. I heard a parent say it to me the other day, and I just, you know, I don't even kind of respond on these things because I'm just like, this guy doesn't really understand. But I heard a parent say to me, you know what I love about XYZ's practice? When I come to pick them up, they're running sprints at the end of practice.
So many.
And the first thing that I was thinking is, that's so knowledge that it has whether they're going to win the game or not. But in a parent's head, if that team ends up being good, they will attribute it amazingly to them running after practice. You know, not the fact that they have the better team or some skilled players, but the fact that they did it after practice. And little did they realize that if they focused more on the front end, or I've heard this, oh man, like this person he practiced for 2.5 hours. Those kids work. I'm like, what? What are they doing for 2.5 hours? Like,
right. Because Dave, we're in that. We've also shifted, right, in terms of even, you know, when we were doing this 7, 8 years ago. Yeah. Like we've always, that's always been our structure. That's always been how it is look, we're not going to waste time with conditioning and running and doing all this kind of stuff. Like we're going to implement that into making practice. It's all within practice. It's part of practice, because if now, even for the athletes, even if you don't call it conditioning, right, we're just tempoing and going faster within practice. We're getting everything we need the same way as if we lined everybody up on the goal line at the end of practice and said sprint, right? Like, if anything, that should be the first segment of practice, not the end segment of practice. I think that's a transition, but because a lot of coaches have never done that, and that's like not what it is. And there are parents that are going to say, why aren't you conditioning more? Why aren't you running more? Why aren't you doing this? It's like, well, when you see the freshness, and the biggest factor, and Tony talks about this all the time, is the health of your football team.
Correct.
Right? Most injuries happen when? August, the first weeks of practice. And now, guys, when you get to that last week of the season and majority of your roster is healthy, you have no ACLs, right? Nobody's done a hamstring, quads are all good. Everybody's healthy. That's when I think parents will start to buy into it more and understand this is why we do it, right? We don't need to do that because this has been a process of now, look, we've kept the health together throughout the entire year. And that's ultimately when, the buy-in, I believe, starts to happen more and more and more. But it's really hard to get coaches out of that mold, man. Like, those guys are stubborn, hard-headed. Like, we got to run our gassers. We got to do our no, you don't, man. Structure your practice smarter and you'll save yourself on time, health, all of the things that actually factor into winning games on a consistent basis. And then ultimately, like, your kids are going to like you more because you're not running them into the ground and beating the piss. Like, they know, all right, team ends. Like, yes, team, that was the best part of practice. Now you go from everybody being at a maximum high leaving the field to, oh shit, we got a condition. And now bottomed out for like they leave that low point. And I don't feel like that's positive, right? Like, let those kids leave feeling really, really good about the hour and a half that they just put into this thing.
Absolutely. And I even see that in the private sector. I've had athletes that will leave my session with a smile on their face and they're getting into their mom and dad's car and they're happy to talk about the whole thing. And a parent will like approach me. They're like, hey man, like, you're not like working my son enough, or like, hey, you're not working my daughter enough. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, I mean, they're not getting tired. Like they come back into the car like they could go do another session. I'm like,
Yep.
Great, perfect. That means that I did my job. As someone in the private sector, I am supplementary to everything that they have going on. I can't pretend that I'm the main thing. Like I'd love nothing more than to have total reign of a program and be able to, okay, we're going to condition these days of the week. We're going to sprint these days of the week. We're going to recover these days of the week. We're going to lift these days of the week. Reality is I have to fit around all that stuff that they're already doing. So if they come to me and I kill them and then they go to practice the next day and they're smoked, well, then that coach hears that they're coming to me and now I might.
Now you're the bad guy.
Now I'm the bad guy. Now the coach has a bad view of me. I'm good. But then what is really fun is when the parents show that concern, but then the times keep getting better and better and better and better and better. The jumps keep improving over and over and over. Their big playmaking ability on the field keeps improving. And then they come back and they're like, okay, I mean, I guess I am paying you for speed after all. This does make sense.
Yeah.
This does. All right, I'm a believer. I got you.
Yes, you're paying me for speed. You're not paying me for marathon running. So
right. Exactly.
There are people you can hire for marathon running.
It's just not me. It's just not
That's
me.
right.
That's all.
Coach, we want to let you go. We've taken enough of your time. It's really been great talking to you. What's the website? Because I know you have a program that people can get and stuff like that. What's the website they go to?
Yeah, so it's btacceleration.com is my main website. And then my Instagram and my Twitter handles are at Brendan Thompson, but without the second O in Thompson because somebody beat me to it. Other than that, I mean, I've got all kinds of free stuff I post online. I've got all kinds of different
you
thinking pieces.
You do a great job, Coach. You have a great platform, and you put out a lot of free information that a lot of people make people pay a lot of money for. So we're very appreciative of that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. So yeah, that's just a couple spots you can get a hold of me, and appreciate you guys having me on. It was a fun time.
No, it was great. It was great having you. Have a fantastic 4th. Enjoy the weekend, and hopefully you get a little break. And we'll see you soon. You ever need anything, we'd love to have you back on.
Sounds good. Thank you. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Coach.
That was great stuff. Really, really good stuff. Yeah, it's
interesting.
There's themes. Obviously, there's themes. It's
of course
it's funny because when things get said to me, and or I see it in practices that I'm like not in charge of, and I'm just like a bystander, and like there's no way
I'm just watching.
I can't really re-educate somebody right at this moment, but like, it's there's a professionalism to coaching that goes well beyond just the knowledge of the skill portion of your sport. There really is, like, coaching to me, like, one of the things that I've learned really a lot of it from this podcast is become a big part of it to me in like the last 3 years, I guess, or 4 years, or three years maybe. It's a lot. It's I think in the beginning we were a little spotty, right, and then we were all the time, but it must be something.
We've been
like
hitting it for a while. Let me see.
I'll 3 years, I would say. Oh wait, no, COVID. Wait, right up. Was it COVID or right after COVID? Right after COVID.
Right after we've been hitting it really hard since like right around this time of 2023, and by the end of like we're about to hit our 200th episode.
Right. So in the last 2 years, we've really crushed it. We were doing it probably for 3 or 3.5, but really crushing it. And
since we've had a rebrand, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
rebrand and kind of like changed up the title a little bit and like kind of focused in on certain things. But I think that the differentiation and the different areas that we hit in terms of who we bring on and what we talk about, I think that on top of like the audiences, like there's something for everybody in terms of like, we get coaches, we get parents, we get athletes, we get people within the industry, like, whether it be youth sports, high school sports, college, like we've hit on all levels of people that kind of are the experts, or they know more about certain areas, and we can bring them all on and talk about this stuff. But there are some common trends that we always try to go back to in terms of, the development aspect of it, or the, just all of these things kind of all go back to like, how do you get an athlete to get to the highest potential for what they have in their tank, right? Like we know that there are levels of this. Some guys are, fast, whatever, but how can you maximize what you have, physically, emotionally, socially? How can you maximize all of those things to be the best version of you, right? And that's where I think like this is really been eye-opening in terms of maybe we had certain viewpoints on things, and now we've brought in not just one person or two people, like multiple people that can kind of hammer down on certain things of, hey, this is why, and they can show you an example of, look, we did it this way and it worked here, or we did it this way and it worked there, right? Because not everything is cookie cutter, where if you do this is what's going to happen. Might not be the same for that might not be what works for you. So we're giving people those options in terms of, hey, well, if you're this worked for this person, or if you're this person worked, right? Like I think that's why we can kind of hit on a lot of different areas when we ultimately like roll out what we roll out, is because we differentiate, we speak to these other people. Like there's something for everybody, right? Like I think that's kind of where it is. We don't stick to one sport. We don't stick to just talking about like the sport itself. It's the development side of it, whether it be the strength and conditioning, the speed, the nutrition, the mental health side of it, the football, basketball, baseball, right? Like the youth coach, the professional coach, the club coach, the rec coach, you know what I mean? Like we're hitting on all of these things where like there's something for everybody. You can take something away of this.
It's helped me. I feel like I have become 1,000 times better coach, even though obviously now I'm coaching. Well, I guess it's 7-7. I still coaching like the middle school and older kids, but outside of that, I'm primarily coaching youth kids. And now listen, this is the truth. Obviously, you got to have good athletes
Of course.
to always to do well, and it helps when your kid happens to be a pretty good athlete, because then obviously other kids want to be in the team with all good, it kind of part of it helps. But I feel like my handling of athletes has really improved a lot, and like handling like what they need and what and I think that this podcast has helped it a lot, like the training aspect of them, when to train, when something happens injury wise, how to handle it,
Correct.
like I'm way it's been hard, like when to tell a kid that it's time to tough it out and when to tell him no, you're not toughing it out, like this is
Right.
not tough it out time, this is
Correct.
and it's
Well, learning that is very, especially for guys like
I
us
used to
who
be a
have
big
done it.
tough it out guy. I was a big
I think we all were. Like, I just look at the way I coached when I started this 16 seasons ago till now, like not even close. Like it's not even in the same realm of whatever viewpoint on off-season working out and training and all that stuff. The mental health side of it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just there's so much, and especially when you go, which working with you has allowed me not only to work with different age groups, but different geographical locations of like people here do it this way, people here do it that way. You know what I mean? Like that type of stuff. And like this podcast has allowed us to me, I'll speak for myself, to see things on a national level, even more so than like, where it was and what my, was before I got into this and what we do. But to see that stuff too factor into it, and just the overall changes and how things have been tweaked, or what is no longer, and what wasn't even thought about is now the main aspect of it, right? Like
help me identify people who are actually good coaches, like how they like
and it's the furthest thing from looking in the wins and loss column, you know what I mean? Like
it's like how does he handle it, like when he's upset, does he move on, like does I say this all the time, dude, something goes wrong as a coach, you're going to be upset. Like you don't have to hide the emotion that you're upset.
Right.
But the key is, what's your rebound? Can you rebound quickly to get focused on the things you need to focus on? Can you help your players rebound immediately? Okay.
Well, I always say this too, right? Like I always say, like, look, there are a lot of things that are out of our control that we cannot control, but the one thing you can control is your response to that.
Correct.
So what's your gestation period of like, all right, I'm going to really like sit in my whatever and worry about this, like that just happened. But now, okay, I'm going to move on. Right. Because yes, there is a part, right? You need to process it, let it sink in. How do you handle that? Like even that aspect of like, how do you handle when things that like don't go the way you're supposed, like, how do you bounce back from that? And how long does it take you to flip that switch and be like, all right, now we're going, right? Like those types of things, like the reaction to the issue at hand or the uncontrollable that happened. Like, what do you do from this point here? Because look, life is going to be life, right? Like it is things are going to come. You got no idea like what it is. You might have experiences, like another is a phenomenal tool, right? Like if you've been in things, like now you know how to handle it. And so a lot of things that I've never experienced, right? I can now reach out and on this podcast bounce that off people that may have experienced it, or they know someone who experienced it, right? Like it's the great thing about social media is, because look, this is really like a lot of the network and the relationships of like the people that we've had on, like, dude, it's like, you can't get that unless you're willing to like secede and say like, look, my way might not be the best way, or it might not be, like, how do I find another way? That's what this is all about, really, is just reaching out to others that are in that world. You know what I mean? Like for you, like you were a football track guy, like now basketball, baseball. You know what I'm saying? Like
I coach you more than I did when I was a paid coach.
That's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's where you learn more things and can get more out of stuff. Like that's what's is so great. Like,
in my opinion, football once you coach football,
yeah,
You could coach anything. Okay.
100%.
And then the thing that I learned from track, but it's been a long time, obviously, other than coaching youth track. I haven't coached high school track in almost 20 years now. But track taught me how to learn to be technical because there was a technical aspect to it. Like a lot of the things this guy, Brendan,
attention to detail. You have to be attention to detail oriented on such a high level because you only like this is what you're doing and that's it. But you can because like you stated with track, you're working with one person, two people, three people. It's not, hey, I have a receiver room of 12, right?
Yeah.
And everyone
and a jumper, it's just me and him. I'm talking to him.
Right.
You
can hone in on the things that he personally needs to do.
Right.
Whereas me, I have to, yes, everyone is an individual, but I have to appeal to more of the masses.
You got to speak to the group at the same time you're speaking.
100%. Right. Now, and what's changed what's changed, I think, about the athlete now is even though that's a room of 12, they're expecting that track focus on.
They are. You're right. You're right.
How do you navigate?
Coaches now have done better in football, I think, than they did. They probably used to coach. Guys used to probably be football, baseball, or football track, I guess, in the old days. But I think that that technical aspect, you're right. Learning that technical aspect helps. It's definitely a learned thing, the technical aspect. So whereas I think football, there's a leader like the skill set you have as a football coach, like there's not a lot of guys that can coach football. Okay. No. But a lot of football coaches can coach other sports. But it helps.
Go ahead.
No, I'll say it helps to know the technical aspect of things because football has become what you said has become. It's not that
individual
teams are technical. It's really not.
No.
It's not that it's like, okay, yeah, you'd run an air raid, whatever. There's multiple schemes. But the technical aspects of what you talked about, meaning the individual now wants to know, like, why? What did I do wrong? Why did I do this wrong? Dude, my kid is. But
it's why Dave. Like, this is
Mr. Y. So I see it every day. Like he's Mr. Y. Why is that wrong? Why should I have gone there with the ball? I wanted to go here with the ball. Why is that not the right move? And I'm like, well,
and there's a couple things that separate that too. Is like this is where I feel like now coaches like the old like, all right, we ran the play, we did it wrong, let's stop, correct it. No, like we're filming it, right? Move on to the next play, and now we'll coach off the tape, which adds to me to like the whole array. Practice keeps flowing, right? You're not having to start and stop just in terms of your body. Like now we're out of there, whatever, all of those things. But now it also allows you, right? It allows you to like, hey, you got to work and go. But it also now allows me to pay that individualized attention to my athlete in the film room saying, look, you did this. This is what it is, right? That gets you that one-on-one coaching relationship that now they're expecting because that's just what we're working with now,
I don't know what these guys' practices look like now, although I'm sure when I first started coaching, the greatest practice coach, meaning like how he flowed practice, was Nympheus. I'd never seen anything like it at the time. It was like 210, 2 hours.
I'm sure it's similar.
He was the greatest at it, and he may be. I'm sure he's less because he used to call me up, and when I was at Powell Park, and then when I was, I think at Red Bank we were doing like 2 hours, 210, but at Powell Park I was forced to go hour 45 because of the busing situation, and he asked me how I did it, like how did you do it and win with. But
it's also one of those things that if you're not that. Like you had to deal with that logistically, right? Like some other sports might not have to deal with that logistically of like a bus issue or, hey, we got to get out of here in a short time period because, basketball practice is this long, baseball practice is this long.
First. So this is, I didn't do it, by the way, to get kids fast. So
no.
I'm going to preface it with,
because you had to get it in.
Yes. So they would go and we would run hills from the get-go and then go right into our dynamic warm-up, or
Right.
we would run hills and then go right into practice, or we do go right into our dynamic warm-up and do a couple sprints. It was a lot of times in the beginning because because an hour and 45, I knew we would basically be like,
Gotta go.
we were in team and they would be like, time to go, it's time to go. Kids were actually good with that too. They would be like, hey, I would have someone tell me when 5 minutes before the bus is going to be here, and a kid would be like, hey, bus is coming. So,
it's on the way.
Yeah. So no, but it's funny because like that, no doubt of all the years I was coaching, that was the most efficient because I had to be. And
You had to be.
Then I went back when I coached with Dunn. I don't know how Dunn does it, but Dunn was a longer practice, but Dunn was phenomenal. He made his coaches coach on the fly. He did not want to stop practice. You had to, only time you stop practice if it was like something like critically important, right? But he never stopped practice. So we used to, like when we were a team, I was doing the running backs and what else I was doing? I can't remember what I did defensively, but you had to walk with the team as we were no huddle. You had to walk up, continue to walk up, and as soon as the play would end, meet your players as they were coming back to get lined up for the next play. And if you had instruction to give them, if there was no real instruction to give them, you just stayed. But if you had instruction to give, you had to meet your players. And basically the players were coming back and you'd be meeting your players, like for me, it was running back. So it was like two guys, you know what I mean? It would be like, hey, dude, next time when you're kicking out, make sure your shoulders are here or whatever. Right. And, or your aiming point is this. And then you got to pop right back because he's calling the play. He wasn't stopping for you. So he was calling the play. You were as he was coming back, you were giving your quick instruction. Play would be called. You were back out of there. So that was the best as far as like, that's why I always say, like, if you ever lose a job as a head coach, and you're not in a hurry to go get another head coaching job,
go watch other coaches.
Go watch other coaches or take a year and be an assistant.
Like in Jersey, being a coach at a Group 4 school is extremely different than being a coach at a Group 1.
Yes.
Because when you want to talk about efficiency, right? Like Group 1, right? Like, and ultimately keeping your team healthy, all those things. Like, you lose your best player Group 1, like week 1, your season might be over already. And now, is that fair to everybody else because you want to be hard-headed or do things like, or not educate yourself in other ways that are better to do things, right? Like, there's tweaks that need to be made. And like I said, that's what I've always I felt like doing those things, coaching at different group levels, whether it be a big school, small school, or teaching at, inner city or suburban mattered, right? Private, public, everything brought something positive or negative in terms of, wow, you can do it this way and be efficient. You can do it this way, right? Like, it just added to, hey, here's ways to do it. It's up to you. And it's your damn job to figure it out, that what works for you. You're like, look, districts have rules in terms of you can do this at that one and you can't do things at another. Like, just navigating all of those waters, right? I think as a football coach separates you, especially to the fact that you practice way more than you play in football. Like, less games, more practice. That practice has to be something that's important, and your kids need to enjoy it, not dread it, because that's 4 days a week of hell for what? Like, that's not going to fly. So you got to figure out a way to make all of those things work. And look, you learn a lot more from mistakes than you do from doing things right. So you figure it out, and you're constantly changing and tweaking year to year, because your team's going to change, your kids are going to change, your administration's going to change. Like, shit's going to change. If you don't change with it and just say, hey, this is how we do it because this is how we do it, you're not going to be very successful. I don't care who you are.
No doubt about it. And I think that's an important thing. Like I have all these ideas that I've written down that I'm gonna try. One of the nice things about youth is that you could try things.
Dude, guinea pigs. Maybe guinea pigs not the right word. That's not right. We're not experimenting on them here, but we are going. The risk, I guess, the risk of what you're gonna do, the negative from taking a risk and failing isn't the same as if you're that high school coach that's in the spotlight, right?
No,
so hey, you're the youth coach. Like for the most part, people are just happy that you show up there every day and send their kid and feel comfortable about their kid going there and like maybe he learned something, right? Like, or whatever it is. Like, so yeah, you can take more of those risks, right? And hey, let's try this and see how it works. Like, that's what's great about that. Like, absolutely.
I have to say, there's one thing I do like about after practice. So I'm not a huge after practice run guy, but I don't mind like a few hills after. Like, I don't know. Like,
so you'll love this.
I still feel like there's something to that. I agree with the sprinting and the stress on the hammies and those things, but
right. The actual like stuff, right? Like the real deal. Like, hey, we don't do this.
Climbing a hill or
listen. So you'll love this, then, right? You'll love this. Brick Township, right? Like traditional program, dude. When these guys run off the field, every single kid on the team still goes through 10 monkey bars.
I don't mind that. I think that's good.
Before they take their cleats off and go to the locker room. It's still a little bit of like, but like what it like is that extremely strenuous where a dude's like, oh, no, dude, 10 little monkey bars. It's something that adds to what we are, who we are, where we come from, but also like, hey, and there is hey, we could still get like, there's it checks every box component wise to kind of like the vision of your program, but also keeping them
thing too, a little bit of it.
Because look, they're like, how, hey bro, how fast did you go through? Like, and look, that's not something we sit there and track, but damn right that those dudes know, like, hey dude, you can't make it through the monkey bars. Like, but by the end of the season, like, you know what I mean? Like they rank themselves or they do whatever. It's something a little, 100%.
I still think in football, like, look,
you still need a little bit of it. You still need a little bit of that.
Probably like, not. Yes, there's not a point in gassers,
but like, there is a point in doing something of that.
A tug of war, something along the lines that I think can benefit you. Like, and I do think a strength aspect thing.
Yes, because football at the end of the day is still about hitting or being hit. Like, you're still going to have some level of physicality. There's still going to have to be, look, you can play basketball on grass and still be a really physical, hard-nosed team. Like,
correct.
It just is what it is. So,
correct.
Awesome.
By the way, I saw that the Iron Men, the whole league or something happened there.
Dude, the week after we talked to Bedwell, and he was like,
they won 82
we wanted to hang 80. Then we wanted to hang 80, but Manny was like, no, we're just gonna run it, whatever. They hung 80. Like every other team that was, now they were supposed to have like a week off, like almost like a bye week, and then come back. The rest of their schedule opted out of all their games. They're like, we're not playing you guys anymore. You're just crushing teams. Like, we're not doing this. Like, they just bailed.
And that like killed their season, dude. And I heard the league, like, they were really the only ones in the league that were like really actually trying to play games,
like taking it serious, like actually like practicing and like trying to get it to. So I don't know. We'll have to have him back on to kind of explain.
I would love to talk about it.
You're like, hey man, like you beat the hell out of him so much that now it ain't even happening. So like, but
I guess they couldn't cover the mesh.
Guess not. So.
All right.
All right, man. Have a great 4th, everybody. Enjoy it.
Enjoy, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Absolutely.